Okay, we're live. Doug and Brian, welcome to the Leanpub launch video for pain-free MBSE, a rigorous yet simple approach to SysML modeling. One quick programming note before we carry on: we're all muting ourselves when we're not talking because of a little echo issue, but that shouldn't be a problem. So I'm really excited to talk to Doug and Brian about their brand new book. One of the reasons this is such an important book is that it's sort of addressing kind of issues that aren't kind of really necessarily addressed by other books about MBSE, which is something that Doug, why don't you get started talking about that? But first, just introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Len. My name is Doug Rosenberg, and I've been writing books for a long time. This is my 10th one, second with Leanpub. And I spend a lot of time teaching people model-based systems engineering, or MBSE for short, and SysML for more specific than that. We were just talking before we started that really the motivation for this book is that the industry that we're in, model-based systems engineering, is kind of suffering from a reputation problem, right? And the reputation that we're worried about, that Brian and I are both worried about, that motivated us to write this book, is that it's too expensive and too slow, and it takes too long. And the general perception is that it's kind of high pain activity. So we did something different. We organized our book around pain points, and it's real pain points that really exist in the industry. Brian and I have both seen them. And so the book is a couple of hundred pain points organized into like 12 chapters and 2 appendices. The whole idea is to try to address something beyond what a lot of the training out there is, and a lot of the books out there they're intended for certification, right? So people like OMG and INCOSE, hand out certificates. You can be an OMG and INCOSE certified system engineering professional. And so there's a lot of the books and training courses that are out there are designed to prepare people to get these certifications. And the problem with that is that what you need to pass a certification exam is not necessarily what you need to succeed on a project, right? So our book is more practice, and it's kind of like, yeah, well, you may have been taught this because your certification course was trying to be comprehensive and teaching you to use every widget on every diagram. But in fact, if you try to use every widget on every diagram, you never get your project finished, right? So we're trying to address that gap with this book.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Doug. And Brian, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and about what some of the pain points are that you thought it was important to cover in the book.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'm Brian Moberley. I work for Innovative Defense Technologies. Doug and I have been working on this book for over a year now. We started this at the beginning of 2025. So it put quite a bit of time and effort and thought into all of these pain points that we really felt were the most important ones, the ones that have been the crux of a lot of programs. One of those that you'll find in the book is this idea of functional decomposition, and that's a big part of it. One of the things that a lot of projects kind of go down the path of, and it can lead you in a lot of terrible directions to where you're going to have to undo a lot of things later. So that was one of the big ones. I don't want to, go through all of them one at a time, but I would say that that's one of the ones you'll find in there that I think all of us hold a little bit near and dear to our hearts, because we've all been there. All of us systems engineers who are modeling different types of behaviors, you end up going through that exercise, and if you're not careful, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. So it's been a lot of fun working on this book. We went into some really neat detail with some simulations near the end. There's also a simulation that is a simulation model that's downloadable that we have available for free to the public too. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, that's
I can jump
something.
in. I'm sorry, Len. Can I jump in a little bit?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So, a couple things that are different about this book and the overall approach we're taking. Number one is we introduce this notion in chapter 1 that's called the value to pain ratio. Okay, and this is it's a way to evaluate all the practices that your team decides to follow. Okay, and it's one of these things that just seems like it should be incredibly obvious, but for some reason it isn't. And the point of VPR, we call it value to pain ratio, is that before you adopt a practice, you should determine how much value it's going to bring you, and then determine how much pain it's going to cost you. And that you should focus your activity on things that provide a lot of value and don't cause you much pain, right? And this is generally applicable beyond model-based systems engineering, but for some reason, this notion just does not exist in MBSE. And it almost seems like, and I think it's a lot of it's because of the certification prep, it seems like the more complicated it is, the more people like it in the books, the literature and the training materials. And so you get this like complexity built on top of more complexity. And a lot of it's kind of becomes, I don't know, gratuitous. Like, you don't need all this complexity to get this job done. And so one of the first things that Brian and I did is we wrote this thing that we call the Pain-Free Manifesto. And the Pain-Free Manifesto, to sum it up in one sentence, basically says, yes, we want rigorous modeling, but we don't want rigor mortis that sometimes accompanies rigorous modeling, right? So we look at the whole book, all the practices in SysML through that lens of value to pain ratio. And that's really like, if that's the only message that people take from this book, which is evaluate your practices and stay away from the high pain ones, then we will have accomplished our mission. Okay. If that's the only thing that sticks, the rest of it, there's a lot of detail. Okay. There are lots and lots of detail.
Yeah, that's really great. Let me just add the cover to the, so speaking of pain and fun, at the same time, there's this really fun cover that's quite striking for the book as well. But sort of and you've got the Pain-Free Manifesto.
Can you zoom in on that cover, Len, at all? Is that possible?
I actually don't think I can here. Oh, wait. Well, yes, I probably can. Let's just do the old there.
Yeah. So the guy on the left, we call him Bloody Brains. Okay.
Okay.
And AI came up with that image. I basically was prompting it, said, I need kind of a cartoon image of somebody who embodies, someone going to the doctor and saying, doctor, every time I beat my head against the wall, it hurts, right? And AI came up with this. And I immediately loved it. I'm like, that's the cover, right? And it wasn't a unanimous opinion. A lot of people thought that the cover was too extreme. They didn't like blood dripping all over the place. So we actually mocked up 2 separate covers, one with bloody brains here and one with just a guy wrapped in bandages. And I had our artist do like 2 complete covers, right, to do it fair. And we hung them up on a LinkedIn survey.
Oh.
And Bloody Brains won by a factor of about 30 to 1. Okay.
Okay.
And the comments we got from Bloody Brains is, I feel like that guy, right? I identify with him. So that's the level of pain that's actually out there in the industry.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Of course, yeah, it's curious. Like I just sort of talk about the image, like it's kind of cartoony enough that you don't take the blood too kind of, I don't know, straightforwardly. And again,
I hope so, because there were concerns about that.
Yeah, no, if you looked at it really closely, like, that you might be like, oh, that's a little bit much, but no, I think it's cartoony enough, and the doctor's smiling, and then, it's kind of like the font is kind of fun too. and stuff like that. And so it's clearly just kind of in good fun. And I really like the image. With respect to the general, that's a very good idea, sort of measuring our pain to value kind of thing. And I think a lot of times, and especially in sort of just ordinary corporate cultures, people tend to kind of say, well, let's just not think about pain at all. Or even to kind of sort of, people might say that the more it hurts, the more value it must have, which is this weird way we have of kind of, it's a weird kind of self-defeating mental pattern, right? Well, if it's hard, then it must be valuable. If it's hurting the employee, then that's a sort of that's a version of them working hard.
It's the no pain, no gain
Right.
philosophy, right?
Right.
So generally, the way this stuff is taught is a no pain, no gain way to do it. And I've even seen course materials. I've taught with about half a dozen kinds of brands of SysML training materials, and I even saw some where in the labs they would actually set traps for the students, so they would intentionally get something wrong. Brian, it was like the speaker port on a stereo system, right? And they would set it up so that all the students had failed at it, and it's like, yeah, good, we taught them a lesson that time, right? And we're coming at it from the other side saying, man, this stuff is hard enough, let's make it easier on the students, right? And so it's a different perspective, and that's
well, that's a really great motivation for writing a book like this. And it is, we know, it is genuinely addressing sort of pain points that people really do have in the real world. And I think it sort of really resonates with people who see it. The book is Pain-Free MBSE, a rigorous yet simple approach to SysML modeling. I highly recommend it for anyone in this area facing these challenges, if you've felt these pains yourself. And if you'd like to have it sort of that sort of discussed at a kind of very professional level, that issue which Doug and Brian were just talking about, of sort of assessing sort of like where are the pain points, like what value is actually associated with them, and even just being conscious of the fact that there's pain involved in something can help you address it as a problem. So thank you very much, Doug and Brian, for taking the time to do this live stream with me today. For anyone watching who came in late or wants to watch again, it'll be published on our YouTube channel, and you'll see it on social media and stuff like that. So please, if you like it, please like and subscribe, and thanks again, Brian and Doug, for doing this.
Can I get about 30 more seconds?
Oh, sure, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, what I wanted to point out is that even though the book is about doing things simply, the book example is a lunar lander. So it's a very serious and complex example in the book. And one of the really interesting things is that Brian built this parametric simulation of a lunar lander game. So you can actually go play Neil Armstrong and land your lunar lander on the moon using Brian's simulation. And we made that model, Brian's simulation model, a free download. So, and this is, I'm going to brag on Brian for a little bit. He's the best guy I've ever met with parametric simulation. And this simulation in this book is a really amazing simulation. And anyone can download it now. It's a free download. So if you want to learn SysML parametrics, this works really well.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I found a link in the book, and I'm looking at it right here. Very, very cool. Thanks very much, guys, for sharing that. That's just awesome, and thanks very much for using Leanpub as the platform, as always, for this really great book.
Thanks for having us, Lynn.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having us.